Let me hand you back to Bongani.
Well, of course, as tributes continue to pour in for the struggle hero Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, we're now going to speak to somebody who knows all too well what it's like to live a life as part of a family involved in the struggle. That's, of course, Dr. Albertina Luthuli, who is, of course, the daughter of Inkosi Albert Luthuli, the original Nobel Prize winner for South Africa. Good evening to you, and thank you for talking to us. I mean, as I said in my introduction there, you're not only a daughter of Nkosi Albert Luthuli, but indeed you are the original daughter of the struggle, I think we could say, because you know all too well what it's like to have parents who are devoted to the struggle and to have to share them with the nation.
Yes, you're correct. In fact, I did actually grow up within the family where the struggle existed. So in that regard, it is correct to say that I belong there, you know, to the struggle of all my life. And that's a long life now. Mm.
I mean, of course, we know that there was certainly a professional relationship between your father and Nelson Mandela back in the 60s when they worked together in the ANC. Did you grow up with much contact with the Mandela family, or at least at some point interact with them?
Yes, I did. When my father was burned in 1952 as the president, he was the president of the African National Congress, and therefore it necessitated that the executive, who were mainly situated here in Johannesburg, that they go to where he was, which is Cloudfield, his home, and hold their meetings there, you see. So Bob Mandela used to be a part of the executive of the Times. So
you would see all the leaders from that time, from the Tambos to the Sisulus, and indeed Nelson Mandela himself.
Oh yes, yeah. And then of course we're young girls and would make tea and scones and cakes and serve them.
And of course, we know that your father continued to be hounded by, you know, the apartheid police, the apartheid state. What was it like to grow up, I suppose, at all times being concerned for his own safety?
You know, I have to say that it was abnormal. You know, we call them the special branch. We used to do visits to come and harass him and harass the rest of the family. They would come unexpected and just, you know, knock, but we began to know their knock because there was nothing soft about anything that they did. So even the knock was quite descriptive that, well, it's the special branch. And they usually came at night, you know, in the evening after you've had your meal and your supper and your dinner and you're relaxing. And then they would just turn the whole house upside down, really. And those visits were, you know, were not infrequent. So they caused a lot of, you know, disturbance when they did come. They had no good manners, and we were young, and we thought that, what is the need for this? Because we know Baba to be a good person, you know. The fact that he stands there for the, you know, for the struggle against the system of the day and for the people to be liberated, we didn't see it as reason to, you know, to come and harass and disturb everybody at home.
So when you then, I suppose, as an older person now, professional person, watched or read stories about the life of Winnie Madikizela-Mandela and her daughters going through much of the same harassment that you had grown up under, did you have a sense of empathy, of really knowing what it was like to be in their shoes?
Yes, I did, and many other women. But Winnie, of course, you know, Bob Mandela was, you know, a great man in the movement. A young person who was very, very, very vocal. And one felt that they are experiencing this terrible thing, you know, of uncalled for harassment. And she had a young family, just like my mother had a young family. And I tell you, it made life abnormal. And we tended, as young people ourselves, to have something to say to the invaders, to the special branch. We had to be stopped by my parents and try to control us, because we're ready to say things to them and tell them to vacate the house. There's nothing for them there and all that kind of. So Winnie and Winnie's children, Winnie was in the same situation, and I empathized.
Do you think that there's been enough of an appreciation of the role that mothers in that kind of situation have had to deal with? And we know Mama Albertina Luthuli also dealt with a similar thing. Your mother, Mama Nokanya, would have dealt with the same thing. And of course, Mama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela. Do you think there's been enough of an appreciation about how tough it is to be a mother in those circumstances and to try and create what normal life you can for young children?
I think there hasn't been a focus on that at all. Those women really had a burden to carry. And as I just said, that it disturbed the children. I know it because when it began to happen to me as well, when my own husband was banned, it affected my children to the extent, I was living at Clermont Township, to the extent that the teachers actually called us, me and my husband, to come and tell us that we noticed that your children that were at that school, their performance is going down. Yeah. And they even described how one of their children was so affected by this kind of harassment within the home that we're talking about, that in fact she would come to class and be somewhere else, just staring with like this. You see, the teachers actually demonstrated sort of going into a state of just being paralyzed like that. So it was deep. And the higher in the hierarchy of the African National Congress, the more intense would be this intimidation and harassment. So the mothers, my mother, this Mrs. Sisulu's, and such people, and I imagine the Mrs. Mbeki and others, were really faced with a situation which they had never anticipated. I'm sure when they married their husbands, that they would have to deal with situations of a man who is in that situation and children who are in that situation, and it amounted to severe destabilization of
their families. Yes. Well, of course, as I said in my introduction, you are perhaps the original daughter of the struggle. You lived it as a daughter, you lived it as a wife, as you say. Yes. You know all too well what that life was all about. Dr. Albertina Luthuli, thank you very much for talking to us this evening. That is, of course, the daughter of Chief Inkosi Albert Luthuli, South Africa's first Nobel Peace Prize winner and a president of the ANC.